Okay, let's do one that I've been dreading. I hate to say bad stuff about this boat, but it's time to talk about the Delta. Welcome back, everyone. Super excited to see you all again, but not super excited to do this topic. I've been putting it off for a long time, and it's one of those things you gotta just do it. And I struggle with this because I have to say some bad things about a boat that I really, really like, but don't know if I love. And it pains me because I have such a long relationship with this company. I've been paddling Delta since 2009. I've owned now two 17s, and I owned a 16 for a while, and I had access to and used a Delta 15.5 for a long time. I bought my original Delta to kayak the Inside Passage for a number of reasons, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But then I went back a couple years later with three Deltas, my 17, a 16, and a 15.5, and had an amazing trip. Both were amazing trips, made possible really by how good those boats are. And I think if you're buying a thermoformed kayak, Delta is as good as it gets. With one little asterisk, I think Eddie Line is doing some really nice stuff with thermoform boats. I would say they're the only real competition, and they don't really make a boat equivalent to the 17. I think if you're in the market for a thermoformed kayak, particularly a touring kayak, it doesn't get better than Delta. So that's off the bat the good stuff. Delta's website says 35 plus years of experience. I don't think Delta has existed for 35 years. I think they're talking about the people that work there, or the founders of the company. I don't think Delta existed much before 2006, which is when I found them, and I bought my first boat in 2009. So let's talk about things that I like about this boat. The biggest thing for me when I bought this boat, I bought it specifically for the Inside Passage. And I should say, when I bought this boat, I'm referring to the 2009, the original Delta 17. The thing about that boat, and to a degree this boat, is it is a load monster. If you want to carry a lot of gear, there is not a boat on the market that I have found that will hold as much gear. The flip side of that is I couldn't afford multiple boats. This boat is still fun to paddle when empty. That's hard to do. That is a testament to the quality of the designers of these boats and the manufacturing of these boats. They are, in that sense, sensational. I've said this in classes. I don't know if I've ever said it. I think I said this during the How to Pack Your Kayak video, which was with the older Delta, my older Delta. I can fit a gallon can of Coleman fuel, also called white gas. I can fit a gallon can of that standing upright in the bow compartment, which is the smaller compartment in the boat. That's incredible. It is a great boat for long trips. So I absolutely love that. I love some of the design cues of my original Delta. I loved the hard chines. I loved a number of features that were built into that boat. But we're not talking about that boat. That's why I bought that boat. Let's talk about the current Delta, the boat I'm paddling now. So I bought this boat, I think it was either late 2020 or early 2021, and it was used, but it had been used like 3 times. And the person was selling it because they were like having back trouble or something, and it just wasn't a good fit. So I bought it and have been paddling it ever since. I have put a lot of miles on this boat. It's done multiple trips with me, some of them big, some of them small. It's my teaching boat. It lives on the roof of the van. It's up there right now. And it's done really well for me. As always, the fit and finish of the build is sensational. It is a beautifully built boat. I have no qualms about that. It's great materials. Super happy with it. It does track better in a crosswind than my older Delta, which was one of the reasons that I bought it. The other reason that I sold my old Delta was that it got a crack in the hull that I think was due to a combination of things. One, I'm very hard on boats. Loading a boat on the roof of this van is hard on the hull. But I also think it was a matter of time. That boat was pretty old, and I suspect that the plastic was starting to get a little bit more brittle, hence the crack. That was why I upgraded it, and in general, I'm happy with the boat. The fit is about the same. I like the new hatch covers. There have been, on all three of the Deltas that I had easy access to, my original 17, the 16, and the 15.5, all three had different types of hatch covers. And I liked the very first ones, which were super cool, but the way they were manufactured didn't hold up, and like every year and a half I had to buy new seals for my hatches. So that was problematic. This one I like, not as much as that one, because that one was really easy to put on and off. This one's a little bit harder to put on, but it does seem like it's more robust and it's not going to die on me 18 months down the road. We'll see. I've had it for over a year, and I don't have any issues with it. So in essence, I like the new hatch cover. That's what I like on the new boat. The hatch covers, because everything else is essentially the same. The hatch covers, and it tracks a bit better. It went from hard chines to soft chines. If you want to know about chines, I'll put a link to a video up here. In essence, I like the boat. I have had zero issues with rudders in either of these boats. I had zero issues with the skeg in my 16. And that, again, is a testament to how well the boats are made and materials and stuff like that. Okay, let's talk about things that I'm not happy with. And then we'll talk about what the real problem for me with this boat is. Okay, so I'm not a huge fan of the day hatch. I've never been a fan of day hatches. I think in theory they're fine, but in practicality, they take up deck space or they're hard to get into and out of sitting in the boat. I will give Delta some kudos for putting their day hatch in the front of the cockpit as opposed to behind the cockpit. That a lot of companies do that, and they're a nightmare to get into. So good job on that. And it's a good space for a day hatch, or a good amount of space for a day hatch. In that sense, I like it. My problem with them, as soon as you put a deck bag on or a hydration reservoir on, you can't then get into that day hatch. So that for me is problematic, and to me it feels like a waste. I just rather not have it. The other things that I don't like about this boat, they removed two things that I really liked from the original. They removed the straps behind the cockpit that are used for paddle float reentry. There are bungees and deck rigging there, which you can use, but it's not as secure. And I'm sure that they did this to lower manufacturing costs. I don't know how much that could have possibly cost, but that's the only reason I can think of that they removed them. I would like to see more boats with that in general. I think it's a good thing to have on all boats, as opposed to just doing it with bungees. But they chose to go back to bungees, or go to bungees from having those two straps. I really miss those straps. There was, of course, the entire spray skirt fiasco. That's what I'm going to call it.
There it is, but my skirt's still...
I'll put a link to videos up here, but there were a series of issues. Well, an issue that took a series of videos for me to sort of figure out and fix. I talked to people at Delta who said that I was not the only one to experience it, but there were not that many people who experienced it. And they said that it was not due to the thickness or the depth of the cockpit combing. I think it was absolutely the depth of the cockpit combing. It was much thinner on this boat. Literally, when I got in the boat, the first thing I said was, wow, something to the effect of, this cockpit combing is way less aggressive. The cockpit combing is not as aggressive as on my last boat. It was a little bit harder to get the my spray skirt, which is a whitewater spray skirt, is a very aggressive, tight skirt. It was a little bit harder to lock it in. It didn't want to stay in place. They say that it was the slipperiness of the plastic, but I don't think there was a difference between the slipperiness of the plastic on my first Delta and on this Delta. So that was probably my biggest complaint with this boat. That is still not 100% remedied. I still plan on adding something with some bite to the underside of that cockpit combing that they recommended, but I've got some plans. That's a topic for another video. So that is the biggest problem that I've had with this boat. And boy, have I gotten comments about the spray skirt issue. Literally yesterday or the day before, I got a comment from someone who was like, there is no way that it's slippery. So I agree with that comment, but it is what it is. That's my biggest complaint with this boat. They also removed the mount for the deck compass in the bow. And I'm sure they did that because most people weren't using it. And I don't know, most people weren't using it. I was using it and really liked it. But that brings us to the bigger problem. And I think that this problem is really a Brett problem, not a Delta Kayaks problem. I want a boat that's going to help me push the limits of what I can do. I want a boat that is going to go further, go faster with more gear. And I feel like they made this boat less for me and more for newer paddlers who are doing day trips. And that's fair. There are more of them than there are me, but that saddens me. I miss the deck compass, right? And yes, I could buy a bungee mounted deck compass that goes on the deck, but those generally are not as good quality as the Brunton deck compasses that we all mount on expedition boats. I would like a higher performance seat, particularly the seat back. I think the seat is comfortable. I have the seat back lowered as far as possible and back as far as possible to sort of emulate a higher performance seat back, a seat back like in the Nigel Dennis's, a seat back like in the Wilderness Systems Tempest. That's what I want, and that's not what I got. I want those straps on the back, for paddle float reentry. I want a boat. Oh, I'd like it to be a little bit narrower. Yeah, I would just like it to be a half an inch narrower, maybe an inch, to make the boat a bit more high performance. Those are really my issues. There isn't another boat really for me to go to. Like if I said, you know what, I've had it with Delta because they're not giving me the high performance I want a Nigel Dennis Explorer, right? The problem with the Nigel Dennis Explorer is it starts at about $4,500 and holds about 100 liters less volume in terms of gear storage than this Delta does. And so it's not quite double the price, but getting there, and holds less gear. And that's problematic. So I don't really have another boat to go to. That's not to say I don't like this boat. I do. I like it very much. I've spent a lot of time in it, but it's not the boat that I wish it was. It is, I feel like it's less high performance than the original Delta. And I totally understand that they have to meet a market, right, in the middle, but I don't want a boat that's in the middle. Here's what I want. I want them, so there used to be a Delta 17 and a Delta, I think it was an 18.5. And they were both available as sports and expeditions. And my boat was actually a sport. It was a little bit lower volume. And it still held all that gear. I'd like a 17.5 with a high performance seat, with hard chines and a rocker, and a deck compass mount, and all that storage. That's really what I want. I want a Delta that I can use to push my limits, if not the limits. That's what I want. I don't think Delta's going to listen to me, but I think there's more money in making recreational boats. But that's where I am. So, good boat? Yes. Great in terms of storage, fun to paddle, affordable, beautifully made. Life-changing boat? Unfortunately not. That's my take anyway. I'd love to hear your take. Leave me a comment down below if you're paddling a Delta or if you're thinking about a Delta. I'm happy to answer questions about them. As I've said a couple times, I've been paddling them for a long time. I'd be surprised if there are many people that have done as many miles in Deltas as I have. If this stuff is working out for you, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. You can buy me a coffee on Coffee. My books are available on Amazon. I'll see you outside. And we got really high winds. No fun. But it's pretty.